Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are strapping in for quite a ride, actually. A 40-year journey, if you can believe it.
40 years, yeah.
Through one of the most iconic, certainly one of the most reliable and really evolutionary pieces of gear ever designed. We're talking about the BISS digital delay series.
That yellow box.
Exactly. If you've spent any time at all with an electric instrument in the last, 4 decades, you almost certainly know that unmistakable bright yellow stomp box.
Yeah, it's just pretty much unavoidable. But, this is more than just looking back at old pedals. Our mission today, really, is to trace the history of digital signal processing, DSP, but specifically within this single compact format.
Right.
We're tracking a massive technological leap. I mean, a philosophical one, too, in some ways.
Yeah.
Moving from that initial groundbreaking 12-bit innovation of the DD2 way back in 1983.
83, wow.
All the way up to the incredibly powerful 32-bit float engines that are driving today's, flagship units, the DD500.
So the challenge we're tackling here, and sort of the core story for you, the listener, is figuring out how this really high-end tech stuff that used to need, expensive studio racks, huge memory banks, how did that get miniaturized?
Yeah, how did it get refined?
And made affordable enough that, any musician could just slip it into their guitar case. And our starting point, our hook, it really has to be the DD2.
Oh, absolutely.
That pedal genuinely revolutionized music. It took that high-fidelity, studio-grade echo sound and literally put it right at the musician's feet. A total game changer.
And to really get why that was such a leap, we kind of have to rewind a bit to before digital really hit the pedal scene.
Okay.
Before the DD2 showed up in '83, the main way to get delay was analog, usually using BBD's bucket brigade devices.
Right, BBDs. We hear about them all the time now, often with this real reverence for their sound.
And deservedly so, in many ways.
Yeah.
They are beloved now for that darker, sort of warm repeat, the way the sound naturally decays. But back then, they had some pretty strict limitations.
Limitations like what, exactly? We always hear about that analog warmth, but what were musicians actually giving up to get that specific tone?
Well, primarily clarity and stability, and also delay time. In a BBD circuit, the audio signal is literally passed down a chain of capacitors. Think of it like water sloshing along a line of buckets.
Okay, like a bucket brigade, hence the name.
Exactly. And it's all controlled by a clock signal. But the key thing is, the longer you wanted the delay time, the more buckets or stages the signal had to pass through.
Which means more chances for things to go wrong.
Precisely. Each stage added a tiny bit of noise, a tiny bit of signal loss. So as the delay time increased, the noise floor just shot up. The repeats got darker, yes, but also blurrier, noisier. They degraded pretty quickly.
So longer delays were just messy.
Yeah, very much so. The shift to digital, therefore, wasn't just a novelty. It was necessary. It offered pristine, crystal clear repeats. It offered stability. And crucially, it offered much, much longer delay times than analog could realistically achieve without becoming prohibitively noisy or needing incredibly complex, expensive circuitry.
So when we talk about this badass DD journey, we aren't just looking at, a sequence of new pedals coming out. We're really tracking the democratization of cutting-edge DSP technology.
That's a great way to put it.
From that initial 12-bit processing, which must have seemed like science fiction in a pedal in 1983.
Oh, it really was.
Right up to today's super high-resolution stuff, 32-bit float engines running at, 96 kilohertz sample rates.
Yeah, absolutely top-tier stuff.
That huge leap in processing power, in fidelity, all packed into that familiar yellow box, that's the real story we're digging into today.
And that whole journey kicks off with a really remarkable piece of engineering.
Okay, part 1, the digital genesis. We're talking about the 12-bit revolution, really kicked off by the DD2 and then cemented by the incredibly successful DD3.
Right, the DD2. Released in 1983, this thing is a genuine historical milestone. I mean, we really can't overstate its importance.
Why so significant?
Because it was the very first compact digital delay pedal ever successfully brought to market. Full stop. It fundamentally changed what musicians expect that an effects pedal could even do.
Before this, digital delay meant, big, expensive studio gear?
Exactly. It meant dropping thousands of dollars serious money back then on a bulky, heavy studio rack unit, like the big Lexicons or the Eventides, or closer to home for BISS, the Roland units.
And that leads to the really interesting part of the DD2's origin story, doesn't it? Where its tech actually came from. It wasn't entirely built from scratch for a pedal format.
No, not at all. BISS engineers very cleverly essentially borrowed, or maybe adapted is a better word, the core architecture from a much larger professional Roland rack delay unit,
Which one was that?
the Roland SDE3000, a very highly regarded rack delay from that era.
Okay, so they took studio rack tech.
They absolutely did. They took the core digital engine that includes the analog to digital converters, the digital analog converters, the crucial memory technology, the stuff that powered this massive SDE 3000, which was, a standard piece in high-end studios.
Right.
And they somehow managed to squeeze it pretty much component by component into that standard compact BOSS stompbox shell.
That's incredible miniaturization for the time.
It really was. And this technological transfer, taking studio power and putting it in a pedal, that's precisely why the DV2 caused such a massive stir. It genuinely bridged that gap between the expensive, inaccessible studio rack world and the pedal boards of actual working musicians for the very first time.
Now, technically, you mentioned it used a 12-bit PCM digital delay processor. PCM just meaning pulse code modulation, the standard way of digitizing audio.
Yeah.
But you also used a technical term, companding, and said it was key to making it sound professional. For us listening, what exactly is companding, and why was it so crucial for a 12-bit pedal back in 1983?
Right, that's a fantastic question, because companding really is the secret sauce that made that early digital delay sound, usable and relatively quiet, despite the limitations.
Okay.
Think of it like this. 12-bit processing means the digital word representing your guitar's volume at any given instant only has 12 bits of information. Compared to today's 24 or 32 bits, that's quite a low resolution.
Like a low-res digital photo, maybe. Fewer pixels to capture the detail.
Exactly like that. Now, where this becomes a problem is with quiet sounds. When you try to digitize very quiet parts of your signal with only 12 bits, that lack of resolution becomes really apparent. It introduces noise and hiss, basically quantization noise. We call this the noise floor.
So low resolution makes the quiet bits sound kind of fuzzy or noisy.
Precisely. Companding is a two-part process designed to trick the system in a way. First, you compress the dynamic range of the signal before it gets digitized. You artificially boost those very quiet parts, making them louder relative to the loud parts.
Okay, so you squash the dynamics a bit.
Right, so now even the quiet bits are loud enough to be captured more cleanly by the limited 12-bit converter, hopefully staying above that inherent noise floor. Then, after the signal has been stored in memory and is being played back, you reverse the process. You expand the dynamic range back to its original state.
Compacting, compression, then expansion.
You got it. It attenuates those boosted quiet parts back down to their original level. It's essentially an auditory trick, a clever bit of signal processing designed to make relatively low-resolution digital audio sound much, much cleaner and quieter than it actually is, technically speaking.
Yeah.
It was pretty much mandatory to get that professional studio-like clarity from 12-bit tech back then.
And that clarity, even with the underlying tech limits, is what defined its sound, wasn't it? It was incredibly pristine compared to the murky analog BBDs of the day.
Absolutely pristine in comparison.
Yet people now often talk about the DD2 and DD3 having a slight grit or grain. Is that the 12-bit processing showing through, even with companding?
I think that's exactly what it is. Despite the companding, 12-bit is still 12-bit. There's an inherent character there, a slight texture that you don't get with modern super high-fidelity converters. It's clean, yes, but not sterile. And that specific character, that slight grainy quality, is actually highly sought after now for its sort of vintage digital vibe.
Interesting how things come full circle. What about the specs? How much delay time could you actually get?
The functional specs were pretty remarkable for a compact pedal in '83. The delay range went from 12.5 milliseconds, good for like super short doubling effects, all the way up to 800 milliseconds.
Just under a second?
Yeah, nearly a full second. That 800 meters might seem limited now, but back then, for a compact unit, that was substantial. It made it absolutely perfect for the kind of rhythmic, syncopated guitar playing that was becoming huge in the 1980s.
Like infusion or synth pop, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Anything that demanded crisp, clearly defined echoes that didn't just dissolve into mud like some analog delays would at longer settings. The DD2 delivered that clarity.
But packing all that cutting-edge circuitry into a small box must have come with some practical downsides for the player, right? I seem to remember something about power.
Oh, it definitely did. The DD2 was, for its time, quite power-hungry. It required a fairly large current draw compared to typical analog pedals.
Which meant?
It meant you couldn't just daisy chain it with everything else using a standard power supply of the day. It specifically needed the older BIOS ACA power adapter, which supplied a higher voltage that the pedal internally regulated down.
Ah, the ACA versus PSA adapter issue, a classic headache for vintage BOSS users.
Precisely. The fact that it required this specific kind of non-standard higher current power supply was a really clear signal that this wasn't just another fuzzbox. This was advanced, power-hungry digital technology crammed into the smallest possible package. But, despite those minor hassles,
The impact was huge.
immense. The historical impact just overshadowed those trade-offs. It effectively launched the entire BSS digital legacy, set the benchmark for what a digital delay pedal could be, and really changed the game.
So the DD2 arrives, it's revolutionary, it's based on studio tech, but it's maybe a bit expensive and has that tricky power requirement. How do you follow up an act like that?
Well, the classic business move, really. You maintain the core quality, the core sound that people loved, but you find ways to make it cheaper and easier to use. And that brings us directly to the DD3, introduced just a few years later in 1986.
The DD3. Okay, this one is truly iconic. Probably the delay pedal many people picture when you just say BSS delay.
Without a doubt. The DD3 essentially became the standard bearer. It replaced the DD2 in the lineup, but, and this is the crucial point, especially for the early versions, it was essentially electronically identical in its core function and sound.
Really? The same circuit.
Pretty much, yeah. BIOS was able to take advantage of advancements in manufacturing, and especially the falling cost of the necessary memory chips, to significantly lower the production cost.
Which meant a lower price for guitarists.
Exactly. Big drop in the retail price, making it much more accessible. And critically, they redesigned the power section. It now ran off the standard BIOS PSA adapter, the 9-volt regulated supply that became the industry standard.
Ah, problem solved. Much more user-friendly on a typical pedal board.
Instantly. That change alone made a huge difference.
And the DD3's legacy is just incredible because of its sheer longevity, isn't it? It became one of the longest-running digital effects pedals in history.
Absolutely phenomenal run. It was in continuous production with some minor internal revisions over the years, but fundamentally the same pedal from 1986 all the way up until 2019.
33 years? That's insane for a piece of music tech.
It really is. For a whole generation, maybe even 2 generations of musicians, if you said digital delay, the default image in their head was almost certainly a DD3. It was just the digital delay for so long.
So it kept that foundational 12-bit PCM circuit.
Yes. Kept the 12-bit engine, kept that characteristic bright yet slightly textured sound.
And the same delay time range.
Same range, 12.5 milliseconds up to 800 milliseconds. It still offered those 3 fixed delay time ranges selected by the mode dial, 50 meters, 200 meters, and 800 meters max, plus that rather famous hold function.
Right, the hold function. I definitely want to spend a moment on that because that was a pretty unique feature for its time and defined how a lot of people used the DD3 creatively, didn't it?
It really did. It was a fascinating kind of artifact of early DSP capabilities. It's important to understand it wasn't a looper in the modern sense, not like a Ditto or an RC series pedal.
So what was it?
It was more like a rudimentary sampler or maybe a freeze effect. It was capable of capturing and continuously playing back whatever was in the delay memory buffer at the moment you stopped and held the pedal down.
And how long a snippet could it hold?
Well, it was limited by the maximum delay time, so about 800 milliseconds worth of audio. Just under a second.
Okay, so not long enough to loop a chord progression or anything?
No, definitely not for building song structures like modern loopers. But that short duration actually led to its specific creative uses. People would use it for these immediate short burst loop captures. You could say capture a single chord hit or a short melodic phrase and have it drone underneath while you soloed over it.
Like an instant static texture layer.
Exactly. Or you could use it to kind of maximize the density of a short slapback echo, making it sustain indefinitely for a moment. It was used for these quick textural additions, these momentary sonic events, rather than for composing layered parts. Really creative applications popped up.
So summing up the DD3, its legacy is really defined by that incredible simplicity, that unique 12-bit bright but not sterile tone, and its absolutely legendary reliability, built like a tank.
Oh, yeah. You still see original DD3s on Pro boards today. They just work. And for countless players, that 800 meters maximum delay time wasn't really seen as a limitation back then. It was actually the ideal range for the kinds of sounds they needed. Quick slapback, rhythmic echoes for rock and pop.
It was the definition of set it and forget it delay.
Perfectly put. It just did its job, sounded good, and never broke. That's why it lasted over 3 decades as the standard.
Okay, so that era of 12-bit simplicity, dominated by the DD3, lasted for nearly a decade. But then we move into part two. The mid-1990s hit, and music styles are changing, technology is accelerating.
Yeah, things are about to get a lot more complex.
This is the modern transition. The digital engine itself takes a massive leap forward, and features that we now consider absolutely essential, like tap tempo, finally make their way into the compact BOS lineup.
And the pedal that marks this huge shift is the DD5, which came out in 1995. This represents the first really major architectural change in the core processing of the compact series since the original DD2.
We're talking light years ahead of that 12-bit processor from the DD2 and 3, right?
Oh, absolutely. A completely new engine. The DD5 introduced a significantly more powerful 32-bit DSP engine. And just as importantly, it paired that with 24-bit AD and DA converters.
Okay, let's break that down. 32-bit DSP, 24-bit conversion. What does that jump from 12-bit with companding to 24-bit conversion and 32-bit processing actually mean for the sound quality the guitarist hears?
It means a massive improvement in fidelity, basically. First, the 24-bit conversion provides an exponentially greater dynamic range than 12-bit. Way more steps to accurately represent the signal from quiet to loud. This immediately means you don't need tricks like companding anymore to fight the noise floor. The inherent noise floor of 24-bit is incredibly low.
So cleaner, quiet parts naturally.
Exactly. And the 32-bit DSP, is likely 32-bit fixed-point processing at this stage, allowed for much more precise mathematical calculations when manipulating the audio signal. Adding effects, feedback, filtering, it could all be done with far greater accuracy.
So the digital picture of the guitar signal just became extremely high resolution, like going from standard def TV to HD.
That's a perfect analogy. The result was significantly cleaner, crisper, more transparent repeats. You got virtually zero signal degradation, even when you pushed the delay times out really long. This was the moment the compact digital delay truly became hi-fi.
Sounding like the expensive studio gear now.
Getting very, very close. It could genuinely rival some of the best studio units of the day in terms of pure audio quality, but now squeezed into that familiar Ballas-S pedal format. A huge achievement.
And all that new processing power allowed for some crucial new features that became pretty much essential overnight, especially for players focused on rhythm.
Two main things stand out. First, the maximum delay time increased dramatically. The DD5 could go up to 2,000 milliseconds.
2 full seconds. That's a big jump from 800
A
meters.
huge jump. Opened up possibilities for much longer, more atmospheric delays. But the second feature, the really crucial one for the time, was tap tempo.
Tap tempo. The ability to tap your foot in time with the music and have the delay sync up perfectly.
Exactly. This was a feature previously found mostly on those big, expensive rack units. Bringing it to a compact pedal was revolutionary for live performance.
Though, as we should probably note, the DD5's implementation of tap tempo wasn't quite as elegant as we see today, was it? It had a slight catch.
That's right, it did.
Yeah.
To actually use the tap tempo feature on the DD5, you needed to plug an external, non-latching foot switch into a dedicated jack on the side of the pedal.
So you couldn't just tap the main pedal switch, you needed another pedal taking up space on your board just to tap the tempo in.
Correct. You had to sacrifice that simple single pedal footprint if you wanted perfectly synchronized delays.
Okay.
Bit clunky by modern standards, maybe.
But still, having the capability at all in that form factor was huge.
Absolutely. Despite the external switch requirement, the ability to precisely synchronize your delay time to the song's tempo was a massive deal for a compact pedal. The DD5 really cemented itself in the rigs of players who needed that kind of precision rhythmic echo.
You think of players like The Edge from U2, maybe, known for those intricate, dotted eighth-note delay patterns.
He's the classic example. The DD5, with its clean 32-bit engine and its tap tempo capability, was ideal for creating those kinds of precisely timed, layered guitar textures that became so influential. It allowed players to use that pristine digital clarity perfectly in sync with the rest of the band.
And beyond the tap tempo, did it add any other new modes or sounds compared to the DD3?
It did. Alongside the standard digital delay sound and the hold function, which is also extended thanks to the longer memory, the DD5 added the now popular reverse delay mode.
The psychedelic backwards tape sound.
Exactly. Gave it immediate textural versatility beyond just standard echoes. So yeah, the DD5 was a major leap. Higher fidelity, much longer delay times, tap tempo, albeit external, and reverse, a truly modern pedal for its time.
So the DD5 solves the fidelity issue, solves the timing issue, mostly, but it kind of creates this minor real estate problem with that external tap switch.
Oh.
The market players, they clearly wanted that tap function integrated, right?
Oh, absolutely. That external switch was the main complaint you heard about the DD5,
Hmm.
which leads us very logically to its successor, the DD6, which arrived in 2003.
Okay, the DD6, what's the story here? Building on the DD5?
Directly building on it, the DD6 used essentially the same powerful 32-bit DSP architecture as the DD5, so the core sound quality was similarly pristine and high fidelity. But the headline feature, it solved the biggest practical drawback of the DD5.
Integrated tap tempo.
Bingo. BOSS listened to the users. The DD6 integrated the tap tempo function right into the main pedal switch. No external foot switch needed anymore.
How did they manage that? Just tap the pedal.
It was done via a press and hold function. You'd hold the pedal switch down for a couple of seconds to enter tap tempo mode, then tap the tempo in, and then it would revert to on-off switching.
Ah, okay. Still maybe not quite as instant as a dedicated tap switch, but way more practical than needing a whole separate pedal.
Massively more practical for live use. Just having it on board made a huge difference to its usability.
And did the DSP improvements allow for even longer delay times again? Seems to be a trend.
It did stretch further still. The DD6 pushed the maximum delay time up to 5.2 seconds.
Over 5 seconds of clean digital delay. That's starting to get into serious ambient territory.
Absolutely. 5 full seconds of pristine echo. I mean, that was just unthinkable back in the DD2 days. But, the really defining feature of the DD6, the thing that people really remember it for, wasn't actually the extended range or the onboard tap. It was the introduction of a completely new mode called warp.
Warp mode. Okay, that sounds interesting. What did warp do? This wasn't just another flavor of echo, was it?
No, not at all. Warp mode was where the DD6 really started pushing beyond traditional delay effects and into active sound design territory.
How so?
When you selected warp mode, pressing and holding the pedal switch didn't just activate tap tempo. Instead, it did two things simultaneously. It dramatically increased the feedback level of the delay, pushing it towards infinite repeats, and it often ramped up the effect level as well.
So, instant self-oscillation and swells.
Exactly. It created this dense, almost immediate wash of sound. You could generate these huge, swelling, evolving ambient textures just by holding the pedal down. It took that super clean hi-fi digital delay engine and suddenly turned it into a tool for creating dynamic, evolving soundscapes on the fly.
That's a significant shift in philosophy for a delay pedal, isn't it? From just repeating the input signal to actively generating new textures.
It really was. It signaled that the DSP was now powerful enough and the designers were confident enough to not just repeat a signal accurately, but to start fundamentally manipulating and generating complex textures based on that signal and the pedal's controls. It was bridging the gap between delay and, say, a synth or a dedicated soundscape generator.
So DD6, onboard tap tempo, even longer delays, pristine sound, and this new creative warp mode for ambient exploration. Seems like a solid upgrade.
Definitely a very capable and popular pedal during its run. It really solidified that hi-fi digital sound as the standard for BIOSS compacts in the mid-2000s.
Okay, following the DD6, we then arrive at the DD7 in 2008. Now, this is a model that many players, especially those who favor the compact format, often consider kind of the ultimate refinement, the synthesis of everything that came before it in that single pedal size, at least for that whole era before the current generation.
Yeah, the DD7 really did become the versatile standard for a long time, and still is for many. It felt like BIOSS took the best bits of the DD5 and DD6, refined them, and then added some crucial new ingredients.
More delay time again. Let me guess.
You guessed it. The maximum delay time got another bump, extending up to 6.4 seconds in mono this time.
6.4 seconds. Okay, that's quite generous.
It's very generous for a compact pedal. But beyond just more time, the DD7 added some essential connectivity options that made it much more appealing to professional players or those with more complex setups.
Like what kind of connectivity?
Stereo input and output, that was a big one.
Ah, true stereo operation, not just stereo out from a mono in.
Exactly. True stereo I/O. This was huge for players running dual amplifier setups, using it in effects loops of stereo amps, or integrating it into, say, a wet-dry or wet-dry-wet rig for really immersive spatial effects.
Makes sense. What else?
It also added an input jack for an expression pedal.
Okay, expression control. What could you control with that?
You could assign the expression pedal to control various parameters in real time, typically delay time or delay feedback. So you could do smooth, pitch-bending warp effects by changing the delay time on the fly, or swell the number of repeats dynamically with your foot, added a whole new layer of performance control.
Stereo I/O, expression control, definitely features aimed at more advanced users. But the really significant change in the DD7, the thing that set it apart from the DD5 and DD6, was perhaps a shift in tonal philosophy, wasn't it?
I'd say absolutely. Up until the DD7, pretty much every BAW-S digital delay since the original DD2 was fundamentally striving for ultimate pristine clarity. Higher fidelity, less noise, more accurate repeats. That was the goal.
I'm making it sound as close to the original signal as possible, just delayed.
Right. The DD7 was the first one in the compact line to sort of pause and say, wait a minute. Maybe perfect clarity isn't always what players want. Maybe they actually miss some of that old analog imperfection.
Acknowledging the lingering love for BBDs and maybe even tape echoes.
Precisely. So the DD7, while still having a standard super clean digital mode based on the previous engine, crucially introduced two highly sought-after alternative modes, analog and modulate.
Okay, let's dig into those. The analog mode, was this actual analog circuitry somehow crammed in there?
No, not at all. It was still fully digital. But BLS used the power of the 32-bit DSP engine to carefully simulate the characteristic behavior of a classic BBD analog delay circuit.
So digital modeling of analog flaws.
Exactly. It wasn't just EQing the repeats to sound darker. The programming made the digital repeats progressively lose high-end frequencies with each echo, introduced a bit of subtle musical saturation or grit as the feedback increased, and often added a touch of very gentle, random pitch modulation, all mimicking how a real BBD chip behaves as the signal degrades.
Trying to capture that warmth and decay digitally.
Yes, and it did a remarkably good job for its time. It gave players access to that much-loved, warmer, slightly degraded echo sound without needing an actual analog pedal.
And the modulate mode, what was that about?
The modulate mode took the clean digital delay repeats and added a clear chorus effect to them. So each echo would shimmer and swirl slightly.
Like the classic 80s rack delays often had a chorus built in.
Exactly that vibe. Great for thickening up lead tones, creating ethereal, atmospheric textures, or just adding a bit more movement and richness to the delays.
So this combination, the standard pristine digital, the warm analog simulation, the shimmering modulate, made the DD7 incredibly versatile tonally, didn't it?
Hugely versatile. Suddenly, this one compact pedal could deliver warm, vintage-style echoes suitable for classic rock or blues. It could do shimmering modulated repeats perfect for ambient or worship music, and it could still handle those crystal-clear, precise rhythmic delays needed for pop or fusion. Plus, you had reverse and the extended hold function. It covered a massive amount of ground.
Add in the stereo I/O and the expression control. You can see why it became the modern standard compact digital delay for so many players for such a long time. It offered incredible flexibility and power for its size.
It really did hit a sweet spot. And its primary limitation, really, despite all that power and versatility packed in there, was simply that it was still fundamentally a non-programmable pedal.
Meaning no presets.
Right. You couldn't save your perfectly dialed-in analog mode setting with tap tempo alongside your favorite long modulated shimmer setting. You were still twisting that mode dial and tweaking knobs manually every time you wanted to change sound significantly.
Which can be tricky in a live performance setting.
Definitely. Especially with all those modes packed onto one dial, it could get a bit fiddly. But for a huge number of players, the sheer range of sounds available outweighed that lack of presets.
Okay, that complexity versus convenience trade-off brings us neatly into part 3, the current culmination of the compact format. We're talking about the DD8, which represents the absolute maximum capability squeezed into that standard single-pedal BOSS enclosure today. And alongside it, a really fascinating recent development, a reboot of the classic DD3 tone, but with modern features.
Let's tackle the DD8 first. Released in 2019, this pedal really is the current pinnacle of the compact DD format. And it represents another significant technological leap, particularly in the core processing fidelity.
How so? We were already at 32-bit DSP with the DD567. What changed?
The type of 32-bit processing changed. The DD8 utilizes a 32-bit float DSP engine. This is actually a pretty critical distinction, moving beyond the 32-bit fixed-point processing used in the earlier models.
Okay, fixed point versus floating point. Why does the float part matter? What's the practical difference for a guitarist hearing the pedal?
Well, think of fixed point math as having a fixed number of decimal places it can work with. It's very powerful, but it can sometimes run into limitations, especially when dealing with calculations involving extremely wide dynamic ranges, very, very quiet signals, alongside very, very loud signals happening simultaneously, like in complex feedback loops. You might get tiny rounding errors, or in extreme cases, digital clipping, if the signal level internally exceeds the fixed range.
Right.
Floating point math is more like using scientific notation. It can dynamically allocate its precision where it's needed most. It handles vastly larger dynamic ranges much more gracefully and accurately.
So even less chance of digital noise or distortion, especially in complex scenarios.
Exactly. Floating point processing ensures the absolute highest possible fidelity, massive internal headroom, and incredibly accurate dynamic response.
Yeah.
It essentially eliminates any potential for digital clipping or subtle artifacts that might creep in during, say, really intense self-oscillating feedback or when stacking multiple complex processes. It delivers truly studio-ready, transparent clarity under any conditions.
Studio-ready clarity, and I'm guessing an astonishing delay range again.
Oh, yes. The trend continues. The DD8 pushes the maximum delay time up to a whopping 10 seconds in mono.
10 seconds? Good grief.
Or 6.4 seconds if you're running it in stereo, which it also supports, naturally. But yeah, 10 seconds is enough time to record a decent chunk of music.
And the number of modes, the DD7 had quite a few.
The number of modes absolutely exploded on the DD8. It is truly the chameleon delay of the compact line. It offers 10 distinct, detailed modes plus a dedicated looper function.
10 modes plus a looper. Okay, let's try and run through some of these because they really illustrate the full journey of the DD series over 40 years, all in one box. We've got the essentials covered, I assume.
Oh yeah, you've got your standard clean digital delay, you've got reverse, you've got modulate for the chorus repeats.
And then we see that commitment to modeling imperfection carried forward and expanded, right? Analog, tape, and now a warm mode. Are those three vintage simulations really necessary? Do they sound distinct?
They absolutely are distinct and arguably necessary if you want that level of tonal flexibility. They model different types of beloved analog imperfections. The analog mode, likely refined from the DD7, focuses specifically on simulating that BBD-style high-frequency roll-off and subtle modulation, that dark, chewy decay. The tape mode, on the other hand, is designed to emulate the characteristics of magnetic tape echo machines, like an Echoplex or a space echo. That means simulating things like tape saturation, a soft compression and harmonic richness, plus the characteristic wow and flutter, which is that slight pitch variation you get from physical tape transport inconsistencies. And also the specific way tape heads roll off high frequencies. It's a very different sonic flavor to BBD.
Right, tape has that warble.
Exactly. And then the new warm mode offers yet another flavor. It's generally a smoother, perhaps slightly compressed digital delay sound designed to sit nicely in a mix without being too sharp or attention-grabbing. Great for subtle ambience or thickening, where you don't want the pristine clarity of the standard mode or the specific artifacts of analog or tape.
So it's about giving you really fine control over the specific flavor of vintage vibe or degradation you want.
Precisely. It's nuanced control over the imperfection.
And then the DD8 ventures into some really interesting, maybe more experimental territory, doesn't it? Like the glitch mode and something called plus RV.
Yeah, glitch is pure sound design fuel. When you engage it, it triggers these rhythmic, sort of choppy, stuttering effects and unexpected digital skips and jumps based on your playing dynamics and the knob settings. It's perfect for adding modern electronic textures, experimental sounds, or just introducing some controlled chaos.
Fun for noisemakers. And plus RV delay plus reverb.
Exactly. Delay plus reverb. This is a brilliantly practical addition. It combines a digital delay with a complementary reverb effect in a single mode.
So you don't necessarily need a separate reverb pedal after it for ambient sounds.
Right. It immediately gives you these deep, spacious, atmospheric echo textures straight out of the box. It makes the DD8 an incredibly efficient tool for ambient players or anyone wanting that combined effect without using up more pedal board space. Very smart integration.
Okay, so add in warp mode carried over from the DD6 and the dedicated looper function with up to 40 seconds of recording time. The DD8 really seems to represent the culmination. It's got the highest fidelity, 32-bit float processing, the massive delay range, and this incredible versatility to cover crystal clarity or dial in almost any specific lo-fi or vintage vibe you can think of.
It absolutely is the result of 40 years of digital delay evolution perfected into that single compact BRS format. But critically, It still retains that one core limitation inherent to the compact form factor.
Still no presets.
Still no presets, all that power, all those modes, but you're still selecting them manually via the knob and tweaking parameters by hand. No saving your favorite glitch setting alongside your perfect tape echo.
Which is exactly why the compact format coexists alongside the bigger programmable flagship line, different tools for different needs.
Perfectly put. But before we jump to the flagships, we absolutely have to talk about that other fascinating recent addition you mentioned, the DD3T, which came out in 2020.
Ah, yes, the DD3T. This one's intriguing because it seems like BOSS deliberately went backwards, in a way.
It's a fascinating strategy, really. It seems driven entirely by player demand and nostalgia for that original DD3 sound. The DD3T keeps the exact same core DSP engine and fundamental tone of the original 12-bit GD3.
So it sounds identical to the classic DD3, that bright, slightly grainy 12-bit sound.
Yes. Same characteristic repeats, same limited delay range, 12.5 milliseconds up to 800 milliseconds. Sonically, it is a vintage DD3. It's like they resurrected a historical artifact.
But they must have updated something, right? It's not just a reissue?
They updated the practical stuff, the usability aspects based on how people use pedals today. First, obviously, it handles modern standard PSA power adapters correctly. No more ACA hassle.
Okay, that's essential.
And second, and this is the crucial update, they integrated a dedicated tap tempo input jack.
Ah, so you can finally sync that classic DD3 sound to a modern tempo source.
Exactly. You need an external foot switch, similar to the old DD5, but the capability is there. And even better, the pedal includes a little switch to select tap tempo subdivisions, typically quarter notes or dotted eighths or triplets based on the tap.
So you get the vintage sound, but with modern rhythmic control.
Precisely. This feels like a direct acknowledgement from BIOSS that while that specific vintage 12-bit tone is highly desirable and have a unique character, lots of players love.
The modern guitarist, especially playing live or recording to a click, absolutely demands rhythmic precision. You might love the sound of 1986, but you need the timing control of 2020.
You've nailed it. The DD3T perfectly bridges that gap. It serves players who specifically want that classic 80s digital delay sound, not an emulation, the real deal, but need to be able to clock it perfectly to a drum or a backing track or their DAW. It really proves that the goal isn't always about achieving maximum fidelity or maximum features. Sometimes the goal is accurately replicating a beloved specific sonic character and just giving it the modern usability features it needs to stay relevant. A very cool move by BIOSS.
Okay, that covers the evolution within the compact format right up to today. Now, let's switch gears entirely and move into part 4, the flagship line. This is where BIOSS throws off the constraints of the small pedal format. We're talking bigger enclosures, more foot switches, and crucially, the features that advanced users crave. Presets, deep editing, and complex routing capabilities. Maximum power and programmability become the focus.
And the pedal that really laid the foundation for this whole flagship concept was the DD20 Giga Delay, released way back in 2003. This was BOSS's first major foray into that larger twin pedal format for a delay unit.
Right, the twin pedal series with 2 foot switches side by side.
Exactly. It was a clear acknowledgement that for more advanced delay users, the single foot switch and limited controls of the compact pedals just weren't enough anymore. They needed more real estate, more hands-free control, and critically, memory.
And they called it the Giga Delay. I assume that wasn't just marketing hype. It offered significantly more delay time.
Oh yeah, they weren't kidding. The DD20 immediately pushed the maximum available delay time way up to a massive 23 seconds.
23 seconds, that's almost half a minute.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That kind of time instantly brought it into the territory of dedicated looping devices, even though looping wasn't its primary function. It opened up enormous possibilities for creating long, evolving ambient textures, sound-on-sound layering.
Right.
Really serious sonic sculpting.
What was the tech under the hood? Was it similar to the compacts of that era, like the DD6?
It used high-quality 24-bit ADA converters, similar to the DD5 and DD6, ensuring excellent audio fidelity. And it was powered by a potent 32-bit DSP engine, again, likely fixed point at this time, but obviously coupled with much more memory capacity to handle that enormous delay time.
But the real game changer, the feature that truly established the flagship concept for BIOSS delays, was programmability, wasn't it?
That was absolutely the killer app. The DD20 offered 4 user-programmable preset slots, plus a 5th manual mode which just reflected the current knob settings.
4 presets doesn't sound like a lot now, but back in 2003 for a delay pedal.
It was a genuine game changer for live performance. Think about it. You could finally save completely different complex delay settings and recall them instantly with a foot switch. Maybe you have a smooth, long, analog-style ambient wash saved on preset 1. Then on preset 2, you have a sharp, rhythmic, tap-tempo synced ping-pong delay. Preset 3 could be a crazy reverse effect.
Being able to switch between those instantly mid-song without bending down to tweak knobs, huge advantage.
Massive. It made using complex delay setups live incredibly practical for the first time in a bias pedal format.
And did the modes on the DD20 reflect this more advanced user target? Were they more complex than the compact pedal modes?
They definitely were. The DD20 featured 10 distinct delay modes, plus the sound-on-sound looper. And yeah, several modes were specifically geared towards more complex textural effects favored by ambient, experimental, or progressive players.
Like what?
You had modes like Smooth, which offered a particularly lush, reverb-like delay. You had Warp and Twist, which allowed for really extreme feedback-driven manipulations and oscillations, kind of superpowered versions of the DD6's Warp. And importantly, it had dual and pan modes.
Dual delay, like running 2 delays at once.
Exactly. The dual mode allowed for setting up series or parallel short-long delay combinations for intricate rhythmic patterns. The pan mode created delays that automatically swept across the stereo field. These kinds of multi-voice stereo-focused effects really require substantial DSP power and are aimed squarely at players creating sophisticated soundscapes.
So the DD20 really laid down the blueprint for what a BDAS flagship delay should be. More time, more control, presets, and more complex creative algorithms.
Absolutely. For over a decade, from 2003 until it was eventually discontinued around 2015, the DD20 was the benchmark for an advanced, yet relatively user-friendly, programmable digital delay pedal. It really set the stage perfectly for what came next, the current generation of even more powerful flagship units.
Okay, which brings us right up to the present era, and to pedals that offer just an overwhelming amount of power and flexibility. The DD500 and its slightly smaller sibling, the DD200. Let's start with the absolute top of the mountain, the DD500 digital delay, which landed in 2015.
Right, the DD500. This machine is really the ultimate current manifestation of the entire BIOS delay legacy. It's less like a pedal and more like a genuine professional studio multi-effects processor that just happens to be housed in a rugged floor-based unit.
So the technology inside must be pretty serious. What are we talking about architecturally?
We're talking about truly top-tier, arguably future-proof specs. It uses the same kind of high-powered 32-bit float DSP engine found in the compact DD8, ensuring that incredible headroom and accuracy. But the DD500 runs its entire signal path, including the analog-to-digital and digital-to-analog conversion, at an incredibly high 96 kilohertz sample rate.
96 kilohertz. Okay, that's double the standard CD quality rate of 44.1 kilohertz, and higher even than the typical pro audio standard of 48 kilohertz. Why does a guitarist need that incredibly high sample rate in a delay pedal? What's the audible benefit?
It's about ensuring unparalleled clarity, transparency, and extremely accurate frequency response, especially when you're dealing with very complex sounds or stacking multiple effects. When you're running really long delay lines using intricate algorithms with lots of filtering or modulation, or combining delays with other effects internally, a lower sample rate can sometimes introduce subtle digital haze or aliasing artifacts unwanted frequencies folding back down into the audible spectrum, particularly in the very highest frequencies above 15-18 kilohertz.
So artifacts that might make the effect sound slightly less natural or transparent compared to the dry signal.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Processing at 96 kilohertz effectively pushes any potential aliasing artifacts way, way up, far beyond the range of human hearing. It means that the delayed signal retains the full frequency content and dynamic nuance of your original guitar tone with absolute fidelity. The output tone, aside from the intended delay effect, is basically indistinguishable from your clean, unprocessed signal. It just adds the delay perfectly with zero tonal compromise. Ultimate transparency.
Okay, so top-tier processing. And the DD500 boasts, what, 12 distinct delay algorithms or modes? That seems like a lot to explore. Is this just more variations on tape and analog, or is there more complex stuff going on?
It's far beyond just variations. This is where the sheer power of the DD500's DSP really shines. Yes, you have your pristine standard digital delay. You have excellent emulations of vintage digital like the DD2, tape echo, and analog BBD delays. Then you get to some really complex and unique stuff. Well, you have the Terra Echo, which is derived from Bias's popular TE2 pedal. It's this incredibly spacious, swirling, highly modulated, almost reverb-like ambient effect. Very unique. You have SFX modes, which offer specialized sounds like filter delays, bit crush delays, and other more out there effects. But the Most significant modes, the ones that really leverage the DD500's architecture, are probably the dual and pattern modes.
Right, you mentioned dual modes on the DD20. Does the DD500 take that concept further?
Oh, much further. Because the DD500's primary power feature is that it contains two completely independent, high-power delay engines running simultaneously within the pedal.
Two separate delays in one box.
Exactly. Two full-featured delay processors.
Yeah.
And you can route them in various ways, in series, in parallel, or in specialized A/B configurations where they process different parts of the signal or switch between each other.
So in a series setup.
The output of the first delay engine feeds into the input of the second one. This allows you to create incredibly complex, cascading rhythmic textures, maybe a short slapback feeding to a long modulated delay, for example.
And in parallel.
Both delay engines process your clean guitar signal simultaneously, and their outputs are mixed together. This is fantastic for creating huge, wide stereo delay spreads, maybe with different delay times or characters panned left and right.
That level of routing complexity, it's like having two high-end delay pedals inside one enclosure that you can configure however you want.
That's exactly what it is. You could, in theory, set up engine A to sound like a DD8 in tape mode and engine B to sound like a DD8 in analog mode and run them in parallel stereo. The possibilities are immense. The pattern mode also uses both engines to create complex, multi-tap rhythmic sequences with up to 16 taps.
Wow. Okay, so dual engines, 96 kilohertz processing. What about control and memory?
Full MIDI input and output is crucial here. You can synchronize the DD500's tempo perfectly to external sequencers, drum machines, or DAWs. You can control almost any parameter via MIDI CC messages and switch presets remotely. There's also a dedicated USB port for connecting to a computer, allowing you to use BioSS's editor librarian software for really deep diving into parameters and managing presets.
And how many presets can it store? The DD20 had 4.
The DD500, it can store up to 297 user presets, plus the manual setting, effectively nearly 300 memory patches.
300. Okay, that's borderline excessive, maybe.
It's certainly comprehensive. It means you can craft and save an enormous library of sounds for every possible musical scenario. The DD500 is truly designed to be a centerpiece for a professional guitar rig, capable of handling literally everything from the most precise, studio-clean, synchronous rhythmic patterns to the lushest, most complex, customized ambient soundscapes imaginable.
The trade-off, of course, has to be the complexity, right? And the physical size. It's a big pedal.
Absolutely. It demands a significant chunk of pedal board real estate. And unlocking all that power, managing those 300 patches, configuring the dual engines and deep routing options, it definitely requires a commitment to reading the manual and potentially involves some menu diving on the pedal's LCD screen or using the computer editor. There's a learning curve involved to get the most out of it.
Which is probably why BioSS introduced the perfect bridge unit, sitting between the ultimate power of the DD500 and the relative simplicity of the compact DD8. You mentioned the DD200 digital delay.
Exactly. The DD200, which came out in 2019 alongside the rest of the 200 series pedals, is designed to solve that exact dilemma. How do you get flagship-level sound quality and powerful features, but in a more manageable, intuitive package?
So what's the core idea? Does it use the same high-end tech as the 500?
Yes, that's the key. The DD200 takes the essential sonic foundation of the flagship, that same powerful 32-bit float DSP engine and that pristine 96 kilohertz internal processing, but houses it in the smaller, more pedal board-friendly 200 series form factor. It's roughly half the size of the DD500, with fewer knobs and a simpler interface.
So same sound quality, smaller box, easier controls. What's the compromise? Fewer features, fewer presets.
It's essentially a carefully curated selection of the DD500's capabilities, focusing on practicality and usability. It retains 12 versatile and powerful delay types, including many of the advanced modes like Ter-Echo, Shimmer, Pattern, Dual, and excellent analog tape emulations. So you still get a huge sonic palette.
And presets, does it have memory?
It does. It offers 128 user preset memories, plus the manual setting. Still a very generous amount, more than enough for most players' needs, but perhaps less daunting than the DD500's 300.
What about MIDI and other connections?
It includes basic MIDI support via space-saving TRS MIDI jacks, allowing for external tempo sync and preset switching, which is great. It also has stereo I/O and support for external foot switches or an expression pedal, so connectivity is still very strong.
So the DD200 really does sound like the perfect bridge. It gives you that top-tier, professional-grade sound quality and access to many of the advanced algorithms from the flagship line,
but with a much more streamlined, hands-on control interface. Fewer menus, more direct knob control. It's far more intuitive for players who want deep sounds, but maybe hate extensive menu diving or don't need the absolute complexity of dual-engine routing.
It makes that high-end tech accessible without demanding, as you put it earlier, a PhD in digital routing.
Exactly. It hits that sweet spot between the feature-packed but presetless compact DD8 and the incredibly powerful but potentially overwhelming DD500. It allows players to get truly professional-grade delay sounds and flexibility in a size and format that fits neatly onto virtually any standard pedal board. A really smart product in the lineup.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this incredible 40-year story of the BioSS DD series as we head towards the outro. We've covered a lot of ground, from 12 bits to 32-bit float. What are the key takeaways for you, the listener, from this whole journey?
Well, I think the overall narrative, the big picture, is definitely one of continually relentlessly maximizing processing power, but doing so within increasingly constrained or perhaps deliberately chosen physical form factors. And we can probably break down the entire history of the DD series into three major technological leaps that really transform not just BLSS pedals, but the whole industry.
Okay, leap number one.
Has to be the beginning. That initial leap to 12-bit digital processing using clever companding with the DD2 back in 1983. That was the moment. High-end, clean studio delay technology was successfully miniaturized and made available to everyday musicians. It literally launched the compact digital effects era.
Right, the genesis moment. What's leap number two?
That would be the monumental shift around 1995 with the DD5 to significantly more powerful 32-bit fixed-point DSP and clean 24-bit 88 conversion. This leap enabled much longer delay times 2 full seconds, delivered truly pristine, high-fidelity repeats, and perhaps most critically for practical use, integrated tap tempo into the compact format, defining the modern clock-synchronized digital delay.
Okay, the hi-fi and tap tempo revolution, and the third major leap.
That's the current era. The adoption of ultra-high-resolution 32-bit float DSP engines, often coupled with high sample rates like 96 kilohertz, starting with the flagship DD500 and now also found on the DD200 and even the compact DD8. This leap represents achieving essentially perfect audio fidelity, massive headroom, and the power to run incredibly complex algorithms, including dual engines and sophisticated modeling.
So with pretty much every major iteration, BOSS managed to deliver exponentially more delay range, more features, more sonic options, and higher core audio fidelity.
Exactly. It's a story of constant technological refinement and expansion of capabilities within those specific formats: compact, twin pedal, flagship.
And this stunning progression, this relentless pursuit of higher fidelity and more power, leads us to a really fascinating kind of philosophical point about digital effects today, doesn't it?
It really does. The evolution clearly shows that even as the core audio fidelity reached what you could arguably call studio clean or perfect transparency, pretty much achieved with that 32-bit float. 96 kilohertz processing, the focus of development, didn't just stop there. It didn't end with achieving perfect clarity.
In fact, the focus seemed to shift quite dramatically, didn't it? Towards deliberately modeling imperfection.
Precisely. That's the fascinating paradox. If maximum clarity and perfect replication of the input signal is the ultimate technological goal, why would you then dedicate precious DSP resources and development time into perfecting analog modes that roll off highs, tape modes that warble and saturate, and warm modes that smooth things out? Why put those in your highest fidelity pedals like the DD8, DD200, or DD500?
Because perfect clarity isn't always the most musically useful or desirable sound.
I think that's exactly it. Maximum clarity is often less musically interesting, less inspiring, than subtle, intentional phonic coloration or character. The market musicians, we demand tone, and tone often requires or is enhanced by certain kinds of imperfection. So the tech reached perfection and then was immediately used to recreate imperfection beautifully.
And at the same time that they focused on modeling imperfection, the focus also shifted towards modeling or enabling complexity, right?
Yes. That's the other side of the coin. That's where features like the dual and pattern engines and the flagship units come in. The immense DSP power isn't just used for fidelity or vintage emulation. It's used to create entirely new, complex, rhythmic architectures and layered soundscapes that were previously impossible outside of a sophisticated computer DAW setup.
So the challenge for the future of digital delay, it seems, is perhaps no longer about achieving better clarity. We're arguably there. The challenge now is managing the almost limitless potential for sound design and sonic manipulation that's now contained within even a relatively compact modern digital effects pedal.
I agree. When a single compact pedal like the DD8 can genuinely be a chameleon delay, capable of convincingly covering the sounds and needs of a guitarist from 1983, 1995, and 2025 all at the same time, that's an incredible amount of power at your feet.
Which really leaves the ultimate question, the final provocative thought for you, the listener, to ponder and explore in your own music and your own rig.
Yeah, what do you actually need or want from a delay? Is the legendary simplicity, the undeniable reliability, and that unique, characterful 12-bit tone of the classic DD3, now available again with tap tempo and the DD3T, is that still the ultimate standard for you? Is that quick, reliable, characterful echo all you really need?
Or do you need the deep dual-engine programmability, the pristine 96 kilohertz fidelity, the complex routing options, and the potential 300 presets of something like the DD500 to truly realize your creative sonic vision? Maybe the answer lies somewhere in between with the DD8 or the DD200.
The amazing thing about the BIA SSDD series, after this 40-year journey, is that it genuinely offers all of those options, from authentic historical tone right through to almost limitless modern power. The choice, ultimately, is yours. Which path do you take?